The crucible hung above Virex Prime like a jeweled predator, all chrome ribs and floodlit scars. Elias Ward felt it through the soles of his boots as he crossed the intake bridge, each step swallowed by vastness, each breath tasting faintly of disinfectant and hot metal. 2 Virexian ushers, tall and jointed, flanked him without speaking. Ahead, the corridor widened into a moor of sound. The arena's roar leaked through the bulkheads in waves, a living pressure that made his molars hum. "Human representative," one usher said at last, voice like gravel in a tube. "Final verification." Elias extended his wrist. A scanner ringed him in soft blue light, reading bone density, blood chemistry, implanted devices. It lingered at his spine. Elias didn't flinch. "Clean," the usher announced, mildly disappointed. The walls shifted from utilitarian to theatrical. Holographic banners crawled across the ceiling in Concord glyphs, advertising tonight's match, Vraxian champion versus Earth entry. Odds scrolled beside it. 1:278. He almost smiled once. At the next hatch, Ambassador Nora Soto waited with her hands clasped behind her back. Concord formal black cut her into a silhouette, sharp and small. Her face was composed, her eyes weren't. "You're late," she said. "I wasn't," Elias replied. "They were." One usher clicked a polite apology and melted away. Nora stepped closer. "This isn't a ring on Earth. It's a theater for Empire. They want a lesson, not a fight." Elias's gaze went past her, toward the gate that led to the sand. "Then let them learn something useful." She handed him a thin case. Inside lay his kit, simple beside the alien armories, an ash-colored combat suit, gloves, shin guards, a compact field belt, and a sterile injector. "They'll call it primitive," Nora murmured. "It is," Elias said, fastening the belt. "So am I." Her mouth twitched. "If you lose, they vote to reclassify Earth as a protected jurisdiction. Our trade routes. Our labs. Our right to speak." "I know. And if you win, they'll still try to take it," Elias finished. "Just more carefully." A chime sounded. The hatch beside them irised open, spilling pale light and dry dust. The roar became a hurricane. Nora leaned in. "Remember the cameras. They'll edit anything that looks like mercy into weakness." Elias checked the strap on his glove. "Then I won't give them mercy to edit." For a heartbeat she looked like she might touch his arm. Instead she stepped back, diplomat again. "Go," she said. He went. The entry tunnel sloped downward, curving so the arena revealed itself slowly, like a stage curtain. Elias heard the announcer first, a booming voice layered with translation harmonics. "And now, honored spectators of the Concorde, we present the final bout of the cycle." The crucible opened around him. Tiered seating stacked into darkness, studded with luminous eyes and glittering armor. The air was oxygen-rich, laced with scents tuned for a dozen metabolisms. Above the ring, light arrays tracked movement like hunting birds. The floor was granular composite, soft enough to reduce fractures, rough enough to tear skin. It crunched under his boots. Across the arena, a massive gate stood closed, its surface scarred by old impacts. A ripple ran through the stands as the word human translated across 1,000 tongues. Then the laughter arrived, hisses, trills, barks, clicking mandibles. Some spectators tossed holographic confetti shaped like fragile glass figurines. Others flashed old footage of humans tumbling in edited slapstick. Elias walked to the center mark, a circle etched with Concorde sigils, and stopped. Feet planted. Hands loose. The announcer's voice sharpened with delight. Combatant designation. Terran. Species. Human. Home classification. Death world. That earned a fresh wave of laughter, louder, incredulous. Deathworlder was a label the Concorde used like an insult and a warning. Most of them said it as if it meant barely domesticated. A camera drone dipped low. Elias looked straight into its lens until it steadied. And from the Vraxian clans, the announcer thundered, champion of 8 cycles, Karzul the Unbroken. The far gate slammed open. Karzul emerged like an armored storm, taller than Elias by a head and a half, layered plates of dark chitin catching the light in oily sheen. His forearms ended in 3-fingered hands, each finger capped by a curved talon. 4 eyes, arranged in a predatory diamond, locked onto Elias and did not blink. The crowd stopped laughing. They chanted his name in a rolling cadence that shook the ring. Karzul stalked forward, savoring it. When he reached the circle, he spread his arms wide, then leaned close enough that Elias could smell him, copper and heat. "So," Karzul said in trade cant, voice a deep rumble. "This is what Earth sends." Elias didn't answer. He watched the Vraxian's balance, the way his weight favored the rear legs, the slight stiffness in the left shoulder plate. Old injury. Compensated well. Still there. Karzul's upper lip curled. No blade. No claws. No spine spike. "How do you even kill on your world, little mammal?" "With time," Elias said. The Vraxian blinked. "Time." Elias tilted his chin toward the chrono display suspended above them. 30 seconds, the announcer had promised earlier, as if that were mercy. "Referee protocol," Elias added. "You get to choose the pace. I get to survive it." A harsh bark of laughter burst from Karzul. He turned to the stands, performing. "Hear that? It plans to survive." The laughter returned, but thinner now, uncertain at the edges. A tall referee, avian and skeletal, draped in sensor cloth, glided to the edge of the circle. Its eyes flashed as it synced with the ring. "Combatants," it croaked. "Acknowledge." Karzul snapped his claws together. "Acknowledged." Elias lifted 2 fingers. "Acknowledged." The referee's crest lifted. "Tone in 3." Elias exhaled, just air leaving the body the way he'd practiced under too many skies to count. His heartbeat settled into a steady drum. 2. Karzul lowered his center of gravity, talons biting into the composite, ready to launch. 1. The arena held its breath. The tone sounded sharp, absolute. Karzul exploded forward. The first charge was meant to end him. Karzul crossed the circle in a blink, chitin plates clacking as his mass translated into speed. Elias shifted diagonally, sliding his lead foot through grit and letting the Vraxian's momentum carve past him like a thrown boulder. A talon swept where Elias's throat had been. Wind grazed his cheek. The crowd howled anyway, as if proximity counted as blood. Elias didn't look up. He tracked hips, shoulders, the angle of the spine. A creature built for impact always telegraphed, not with intention, but with physics. Karzul skidded, dug in, and turned with a predator's offended grace. "Run, then," he growled. "Make it entertaining." Elias kept his hands open, palms loose, inviting nothing. "I will," he said, and moved again before the words had finished. The Vraxian lunged. Elias gave ground, 2 short steps, then a pivot, forcing Karzul to correct mid-stride. Each correction was tiny, almost invisible, but it cost. Not much at first. A breath here. Heat there. Micro-budgets spent from a finite account. Above them, the chrono ticked past 30 seconds. The announcer's voice wavered. "Remarkable. The Terran remains intact." Karzul attacked with a feint, upper body twisting left, talons rising, then snapping right toward Elias's ribs. Elias read it and dropped his weight, hopping inward instead of away. The strike passed over him. He brushed Karzul's forearm with the heel of his palm, not to hurt, just to feel vibration in the plating. He slid out, dust lifting in a thin veil. Karzul's eyes narrowed. "You touched me," the Vraxian said, incredulous, like contact itself was an insult. "Calibration," Elias answered. The crowds laughed afraid. Spectators wanted spectacle. Elias was giving them arithmetic. Karzul tried to herd him toward the outer ring where the floor dipped near the barrier wall, an old trick, using terrain to trap smaller prey. Elias drifted that way until the last moment, then cut across Karzul's line and darted back toward center. Karzul overshot, slammed a talon into the sand, and tore a groove. The impact sent a shock through his shoulder plates. Elias saw the hitch when he recovered. Subtle, but real. A commentator's voice chirped through the arena feed. "The human avoids engagement." Another replied, disdainful, avoids death. There is no honor in it. Elias heard none of it. He heard breathing, his, steady, Karzul's, roughening. He heard talons scraping and the faint hiss of oxygen exchanges. A swing came high. Elias ducked. A backhand came low. Elias jumped, knees tight. The claws clipped his boot. Pain flashed quick in his ankle. Elias landed and rolled with it, dispersing force into the floor, then rose before the crowd could count. Karzul barked laughter. There! It bleeds. Elias glanced down. The boot's outer seam had opened, a thin line of red soaking into dust. Not much. Enough to be noticed. He raised his eyes. You too, if you keep chasing. That earned a new sound from the stands, curiosity, sharp and collective. Karzul surged again, angry enough to ignore efficiency. Elias's lungs stayed calm. He'd trained for this kind of rhythm on a world that punished waste. He remembered a dawn run on slick rock, a rucksack heavy with stone, rain stinging his eyes. A sergeant's voice. You don't stop because you're tired. Tired is information. He remembered desert heat and rationed water. Don't spend what you can't replace. Back in the crucible, he used those lessons like a lever. He didn't sprint. He didn't waste. He moved just enough, just in time, small lateral shifts, angled retreats, brief accelerations that ended the moment they did their job. He made Karzul do the expensive parts. The Vraxian clipped the barrier with his shoulder, hard. Plates rang. He snarled, turned, and slammed forward with a two-handed strike meant to break a spine. Elias stepped inside the arc and drove his forearm into Karzul's elbow joint, not a punch, a wedge. The limb buckled a fraction. Karzul recoiled, stunned more by surprise than pain. Elias was already gone, circling. The Terran has made contact, the announcer crowed. Minimal, but intentional. Karzul shook himself, fury radiating like heat. Fight me, he demanded, as if Elias owed him a narrative. I am, Elias said, and let the words hang. Minutes passed, tight, controlled ones. Karzul's attacks came in waves, bursts of violence, then a second of reset, then another burst. Each wave grew a shade slower. His breath began to whistle through his throat vents. His footwork widened to keep balance, fatigue masked as aggression. In the stands, the mood tilted. Mocking turned to irritation, then unease. The Crucible loved champions because champions ended things. Here, time itself was becoming the weapon. A Vraxian elder in the clan tier slammed a fist against the rail. Stop playing with it. Karzul heard. Shame cracked his posture. He gathered himself for something heavier, an all-in rush, no feints, no adjustments. Elias read it and chose his line. He ran, not away, but along the inside curve of the circle, forcing Karzul into a longer path. The champion chased, talons digging deeper, shoulders pumping. The distance stretched. The angle tightened. Karzul committed. Elias cut hard, letting momentum carry the Vraxian forward. Karzul stumbled a half step, recovered, then stumbled again, this time with a visible shudder in the injured shoulder. A tremor. A flaw. The arena, sensing the turn, quieted without meaning to. Elias stopped at center, chest rising once, twice. He didn't look triumphant. He looked like a man waiting for a train he'd timed correctly. Karzul faced him, saliva stringing at the edge of his fangs. What are you? He rasped. Elias's voice stayed low. I'm what happens when you grow up where everything is trying to kill you. Karzul's eyes widened a fraction, then narrowed into rage. For the first time, the champion hesitated, listening to his own breath. The human stillness felt like an accusation. Somewhere high above, bets quietly flipped and the lights seemed colder. He charged, slower than the first time, but heavier. And this time, Elias didn't retreat. Elias stepped forward to meet it, not with speed but with timing. At the instant the Vraxian committed his weight, Elias shifted left and drove his shoulder into the softened joint he'd been testing for minutes. The impact rang like a struck bell. Karzul staggered, surprised air bursting from his vents, and Elias slid past him, hands already moving. He hooked the back of Karzal's knee with his calf and pulled while pushing the opposite shoulder. The champion's balance, magnificent in straight lines, failed under rotation. Karzal crashed to one knee, claws gouging the sand as he tried to recover. The crowd gasped. Not shouted. Gasped. Elias didn't pause to admire it. He struck once, short, brutal, precise, his forearm snapping into the side of Karzal's neck where armor thinned for flexibility. The blow wasn't meant to knock him out. It was meant to steal oxygen. Karzal reeled back, choking, four eyes flaring wide. He swung blindly. Elias ducked under the arc and drove a knee into the Vraxian's rib seam, then stepped away before retaliation could land. He felt the shock reverberate up his leg, welcomed it, catalogued it. "You," Karzal rasped, then coughed, a wet, angry sound. Elias circled, forcing the champion to turn. Turning cost more than charging now. Every pivot tightened the spiral. Above them, the analysts finally found their voices. The Terran is exploiting structural weaknesses. This isn't random. Another voice, sharper. It's attrition. He's dismantling the champion. The word dismantling carried. It struck the stands like a thrown blade. Karzal rose fully this time, posture ruined by necessity. His injured shoulder hung a fraction lower. His breathing came in uneven pools. Rage still burned, but something else edged in, calculation, late and clumsy. "You hide behind patience," he snarled. "Face me with honor." Elias stopped, feet shoulder-width apart. He met Karzal's gaze without flinching. "Honor," he said, "is surviving what wants you dead." Karzal lunged again, slower, desperate to reclaim tempo. Elias met him with a check to the forearm, then slid inside the guard and hammered a palm strike into the same rib seam. He felt cartilage give. Karzal howled, a raw, unfiltered sound, and lashed out. Elias took the blow on his forearm, bone jarring, then rolled with it and retreated a step. Pain flared bright and clean. Elias welcomed it. Pain meant he was still deciding. Karzal staggered, clutching his side. The champion's blood, dark, iridescent, spattered the sand. A hush settled over the crucible, thick enough to feel. A medic drone drifted closer to the barrier, sensors lighting. The referee's crest fluttered, uncertain. "Yield," the avian croaked, protocol overriding spectacle. "Champion, you may." "Silence." Karzal roared. He straightened with effort, talons trembling. "I do not yield to," his voice cracked, breath failing him again. Elias advanced. Careful now. He didn't rush. He let Karzal see him coming. "This ends," Elias said, not unkindly. "You can choose how." Karzal laughed, a broken thing. "You think this makes you superior?" "No," Elias replied. "It makes you tired." The next exchange was brief. Karzal swung high. Elias slipped under and drove a compact strike into the hip joint, then a second into the injured shoulder. The Vraxian collapsed forward, catching himself on one arm, the other useless. Elias stepped behind him and locked an arm around Karzal's neck, forearm snug beneath the jaw, bicep tight against chitin. He sank his weight, careful with leverage. He didn't crush. He constricted. Karzal thrashed once, twice. The movement slowed. His claws scraped weakly, leaving shallow lines in the sand. The crowd stood without realizing it had done so. Elias leaned close, voice meant only for the champion. "You're strong," he said. "That's not the same as lasting." Karzal's eyes fluttered. He tried to speak. No sound came. "Combatant Karzal," the referee called, urgency bleeding through the croak. "Do you yield?" Seconds stretched. Elias felt the Vraxian's pulse under his arm, frantic and fading. He eased pressure just enough to allow choice. Karzal's talons tapped the sand once. Twice. The crucible exhaled in a shockwave of sound, stunned silence, then chaos. Shouts overlapped, languages colliding. Some roared in fury. Others whispered. "Yield acknowledged," the referee cried. Match concluded. Elias released his hold and stepped back. Karzal collapsed onto his side, chest heaving as medics swarmed. The champion did not look at the stands. He stared at the ground, vision swimming, pride in pieces. Elias stood alone at center, sweat cooling on his skin, ankle throbbing where the seam had torn. He breathed until the world steadied. The announcer's voice returned, altered, stripped of certainty. Victory. Terran. The word victory rippled outward, changing shape as it went. In the Concord tiers, delegates leaned toward one another, faces tight. Data feeds scrolled frantic reassessments. Biologists argued. Strategists recalculated. A young spectator in the upper ring whispered, too loud in the hush, he didn't overpower him. No, someone answered. He waited him out. Elias looked up at the lights, not searching for applause. He found Nora in the diplomatic box instead. She met his gaze, hand pressed to her mouth, eyes bright with something close to disbelief. He gave her a single nod. As medics hauled Karzal away, the champion turned his head enough to meet Elias's eyes. There was no hatred left there. Only a hard, reluctant understanding. Elias inclined his head in return. The crucible's lights dimmed a fraction, as if the structure itself were reconsidering its assumptions. The sand bore marks of the fight, grooves, blood, the quiet geometry of choices made and costs paid. For the first time since humanity had entered the Concord, no one laughed when a human stood alone in the ring. The crucible emptied slowly, as if the structure itself needed time to accept what had happened. Elias sat on a bench in the recovery bay, boots off, ankle wrapped in synth fiber that hummed softly as it knit torn tissue. The room smelled clean, too clean after sand and blood. A medic drone hovered near his forearm, light tracing hairline fractures and bruises. Pain index elevated, it intoned. I noticed, Elias said. Analgesic. No. The drone paused, recalculated, and drifted aside. Across the bay, a cluster of Concord officials argued in clipped tones. Their voices leaked through the glass in bursts, words like precedent, classification, risk. Elias let them blur. He focused on his breathing, on the way his pulse had finally slowed to something human. The door slid open. Ambassador Nora Soto entered alone. She stopped 2 paces in, as if unsure whether to approach. Then she crossed the distance and set both hands on the bench beside him. You did it, she said. I finished it, Elias replied. Her laugh came out unsteady. Do you know what the Vraxian delegation just requested? He shook his head. Medical data. Training doctrine. Historical context. She smiled, sharp and tired. They want to understand. Elias flexed his fingers. That'll take a while. They'll wait, she said. That's the point. A chime sounded. The glass wall frosted, then cleared to reveal a tall figure escorted by medics, Karzal, bandaged and subdued, moving carefully. He dismissed his attendants with a curt gesture and approached the threshold. He looked diminished without the roar of the crowd, armor cracked and dull, eyes ringed with fatigue. Permission, Karzal said, voice hoarse. Nora glanced at Elias. Let him in, Elias said. The door opened. Karzal stepped inside, each movement deliberate. He stopped a respectful distance away. For a moment, neither spoke. You could have broken my neck, Karzal said at last. Yes. Why didn't you? Elias considered the question. Because then you'd have an excuse. Karzal huffed, a humorless sound. You think I need one? No, Elias said. But others would. The champion nodded slowly. You fought without cruelty. I fought to end it. Karzal studied him, then inclined his head, deep, formal. The clans will remember this. So will Earth, Elias said. Karzal turned to leave. At the door, he paused. Your kind survives by refusing the stories others tell about it. Elias met his gaze. We survive by writing better ones. When the door closed, Nora exhaled. That, she said, will be quoted. Good, Elias said. Maybe they'll read it. Hours later, the Concord convened in emergency session. Elias stood at the edge of the chamber, weight off his ankle, watching the tears fill. Holographic banners flickered, recalibrated. The crucible's outcome had shifted the mood. Laughter had been replaced by calculation. The Arbiter, an ancient being composed of light and lattice, addressed the assembly. By unanimous procedural vote, the classification of Terran humanity is under review. A murmur rippled. Evidence presented in sanctioned combat demonstrates exceptional endurance, adaptive cognition, and strategic restraint, the Arbiter continued. These traits carry implications. An insectile delegate rose. Implications of danger. Nora stood. Of capability. The Arbiter's gaze flicked between them. The distinction is noted. The vote followed, swift and irreversible. Humanity's status changed, not elevated to dominance, not confined to protection. Rewritten. Terran humanity, the Arbiter declared, is recognized as an autonomous, high-resilient species. Engagement protocols adjusted accordingly. Elias felt the room tilt. Not from triumph, from gravity. Words mattered here. They had weight. Afterward, in a quieter corridor, Nora caught up to him. They offered you a commission, she said. Arena champion. Cultural attaché. Symbol. No, Elias said. She nodded, unsurprised. They also asked if Earth would consider hosting a crucible exhibition. He stopped walking. No. That earned a real smile. I thought so. They reached the intake bridge. Beyond it, Virex Prime glowed, indifferent and immense. What will you do now? Nora asked. Elias looked at his wrapped ankle, at the faint tremor that came with cooling adrenaline. Heal. Then go home. To do what? Train, he said. Teach. Make sure the next one doesn't need a ring. She studied him, then extended her hand. He took it. Her grip was steady. When Elias returned to the ship, messages waited, some official, some raw. He ignored most. One he opened, a short clip from a school on Earth. Children watched the match on a cracked screen, silent, eyes wide. When Karzul tapped the sand, the room erupted, not with jeers, but with cheers that sounded like relief. Elias closed the clip and sat back. The ship detached. The crucible shrank behind them, a jewel losing its shine. In the days that followed, analysis spread through the Concord. Academies rewrote curricula. Gladiators trained differently. Biologists argued late into cycles about pain tolerance and thermal regulation. Strategists ran simulations that ended with red lines creeping toward stalemate. On Earth, the news cycle burned hot, then settled. No parades. No monuments. Just a quiet recalibration of how humanity introduced itself. Elias watched the stars slide past and thought of sand underfoot, of a champion's breath stuttering, of a crowd learning how silence felt. He knew the lesson wouldn't last forever. Nothing did. But for now, it was enough. When the ship entered slipspace, the last message arrived, unofficial, unsigned, routed through half a dozen nodes. 3 words, translated from Vraxian clan script. We are adapting. Elias smiled, just a little, and closed his eyes as the stars bent away.